What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 9 of Bound to Improve. My name is Landon Eller.
And I'm Chris Pound. For this week, we decided to read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And overall, it was a pretty good book. But before we kind of jump into that, let's talk about implementation from last week.
Yeah, so the book we read last week was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And my implementation was to get my income statement and asset / liability sheet in place so I can use that moving forward as I start to try to build up that asset column. And I did get the foundation built, so now it just needs assets populated in it, which will come with time.
Yeah. So for mine from Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was to look to learn from others without looking for money or reward. And I would say I last week, without being asked to, I just went and willingly helped my family with the project they were working on. I wasn't doing it out of maybe they'll pay me or maybe they'll do something for me in the future. It's just doing something that I knew I should be doing regardless of a reward. And it felt good. And it kind of made me understand on a deeper level that, money's not everything. And so, but for me, like I said, one of my micro motives, family, is important to me. And so knowing that having family as a big portion of my life, pushing me to want to continue to grow and improve every day, that's a great implementation that I think I'm going to continue to try to use.
Yeah, that's good. There's so many different ways you can take that too, like in terms of taking a job that's low pay, but you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Or taking a class that's kind of out of your normal realm and you really want to just learn everything the professor has to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. So now moving into the summary of Start With Why. So this book was broken down into 6 main sections. And so we're going to give a little overview of each part with our takeaways intermixed within there. So to start us off here, in the introduction, Simon talks about the difference between leaders versus those who lead. Leaders are those who hold positions of power and influence. Mm-hmm. So that's anyone at the top of an organization or anything like that. But those who lead are those who inspire us and guide us with purpose, setting the tone for meaningful success.
Yeah, so jumping into part 1 here, chapter 1, assume you know, right? We base decisions off assumptions, what we think we know, shaping outcomes from the very beginning. And he actually had a point in the book where he's talking about a Japanese car manufacturer where the doors fit perfectly inside the frame of the car. They didn't have to test anything or kind of tap it with a hammer at the corner. They knew,
like in America.
Yeah, in America, they made the point that in America they had to tap the corners of the doors to make sure that they actually fit securely. And Japan didn't do that, and so they had like a trip to Japan and they asked why they didn't need to do the things that we were doing in America, and they just said that they started with the engineering. They knew that if everything is exactly how we have it set, we don't need to check the doors because we know that it'll all come together perfectly safe and secure.
Yeah, so that was actually one of my main takeaways is be able to engineer the outcome you want from the beginning. So just like that, the Japanese car line, they knew exactly the way the door was supposed to fit in there. So they didn't need to spend time, resources, money on people to hammer in those spots in the door like they did in America. So now moving on to the second part, or chapter 2. He mentioned there's 2 ways to influence behavior. You can manipulate or you can inspire. So most companies don't understand why customers or employees choose them and resort to a bunch of different manipulations.
Yeah, I guess the first one here is price, right? You can have discounts that create a short-term boost, but lead to serious long-term problems. And one of the examples he put in here were rebates for like a Samsung product. And The only problem was, if you fill out this lengthy rebate application and you sent it in, they either decide if you get it or you don't. But the thing about it was that people who live in apartments, none of them were eligible for the rebate because the address came from the same apartment complex that everyone else has had. And so that was a huge flaw in the system. And I think there was legal action involved with that whole scandal. But I guess the second one here would be promotions.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit on an additional point from the price too. If you drop a price of your product or service, of course, like in the short term, it's going to boost your revenue and things to that nature. But then after that short term is up, how are you going to continue to elevate your sales?
Yeah.
Most companies have to resort to dropping the price again. Then it becomes sort of a cycle. And as the cycle continues, the customers are going to expect the price to come down. And when it doesn't, they're simply going to go search for somewhere else. So that's one of the pitfalls of the dropping the price. The second part is promotions. So GM was the leading car manufacturer in America for what seemed like forever until the entry of the Japanese car manufacturers. So once Toyota started to take a lot of the market share, GM had to devise a way to try to take some back or boost sales. So they resulted in a short-term promotion, which they offered cash back for people to buy their cars. So, and they ended up actually losing money
on the new cars
that they were selling because they were offering so much money to try to get people to buy their cars.
Yeah.
And this ended up leading them to financial trouble because they really didn't have a long-term solution to their short-term problem.
It completely backfired in the face.
Yeah.
And that's why, Sinek says that, manipulation is not the way to go about doing business. There are lots of other ways to get loyalty. And true loyalty isn't just about repeat business. It's about customers choosing you regardless if there's a better deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the best example of this would be like Apple, right? Everybody makes phones. A ton of people make headphones. A ton of people make tablets and computers. But Apple has the not just the repeat business, but they've got the loyal business. I personally don't know if I could go from an iPhone to a Samsung phone. And it's not the fact that maybe people think more highly of you from the Apple standpoint. It's just the sense that that's all I know. And so, to an extent, I'm also not willing to learn how to use other products just because I like Apple so much, and their ability to make everything flow together from device to device is something that is a huge benefit to me.
So moving on here, the next big thing he makes in this part is the law of diffusion of innovations, and this really explains how new ideas spread and the types of customers that you really get.
Yeah, innovators and early adopters drive change. Aiming at the middle of the market can slow innovation, and so the earlier you are to the market, the more you're going to get out of the entire market.
Yeah. So how it kind of operated from left to right, you had your people on the far left who try it before anybody else, like before there's even a consensus about what it really does, they're going to go do it. And that was 2.5%. Then you had the early adopters, which was, I might be off of my numbers a few percentages, but 16.5%. Then early majority, 34%, late majority, 34%, and laggards, the last 16%. So my main takeaway here is you should really, when you're advertising and trying to figure out like who your people you should target, you should really focus on those left-hand side and build a relationship with them, because those are the people that are going to buy your product no matter what, because they really believe in your why.
Yeah, I guess although manipulations are effective, they don't breed loyalty, right? They don't build up the repeat customers. Instead, they increase costs and the stress from both sides of the party, and really don't add any value to anyone on the deal.
Yeah. So that would be like, I feel like targeting the middle section of that curve. So the early and late majority. If you try to go and capture a lot of that market, you're going to end up spending a lot of time and resources, because you're just kind of spraying and praying.
Yeah. You're just hoping for the best outcome.
So now moving on to part 4, how to rally those who believe. So one of the key things he leads off here was the difference between two keywords, charisma and energy. Charisma comes from clarity of purpose, not energy. Energy excites for the short term, in a sense. So you can go on stage and really get people riled up, but a month, 2 months later, is that same energy from that speech going to carry over? So that's what he was kind of arguing there. Charisma, when you know your why, it has the ability to inspire for long periods of time, which he said is more important than having energy.
Yeah, he says the main difference between charisma and energy. Charisma influences, energy motivates.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you're able to use both, if not very many people have both, I would say. It's a very he used Bill Gates for an example. He didn't have a whole lot of energy. He didn't motivate people, but his charisma inspired a ton of people and a ton of different changes.
Yeah.
So the biggest takeaway here is no matter what we do in our lives, our why never changes. Our driving purpose and our cause and beliefs, they never change. So again, it goes back to authenticity. It's just being true to yourself and what you really believe in.
Yeah. So moving into our takeaways here is, I think it is important to have both charisma and energy. Like, as more of an introvert, I would say I'm sometimes lacking some of that energy, but I feel like if you're able to instill both of those in your daily routine, I think it'll pay dividends, extreme dividends in the years to come. Then also a key point he kind of made in this chapter was the difference between a vision and a mission statement. Vision is the place you want to go, your why. And your mission statement is the path you take to get there. So really having those two distinctions, I feel like, is important, because you have to know how you're going to get to where you want to go. Otherwise, you would just be running with your heart open and your eyes closed.
Yeah. And you're gonna run right past where you thought you wanted to end up.
Or hit a tree.
A big tree too, yeah. Moving into chapter 9 here, our company's challenge is to communicate its why through its products and ensuring alignment between what they offer and what they believe. And moreover, what marketing and branding should become as a way for organizations to communicate to the outside world.
Yeah. So instead of saying what the product does, instill your why behind it in your advertisements. So then people who have that same why or those values and beliefs are really going to resonate with the language you're trying to convey. Also here, the struggle that so many companies have to differentiate or communicate their true value to the outside world is not a business problem like so many believe. It's not always deep in their financials or a problem with management. It's more of a biology problem. So they're lacking the ability to put their limbic brain into use and really cultivate that why. And going forward here, symbols such as logos need clear meanings to be able to resonate with people. You can have a logo, but if there's no like meaning behind that, it's just going to be an icon that's just displayed. And
unless you're Nike and you have a swoosh and you're authentic to who you are, you can kind of represent who you are from your logo, I would say, to an extent.
Yeah.
And it's like the consistency in decision making helps build the trust, just like choosing only products that align with your actual values. It's like early in the book, he said, doing business shouldn't be about picking up all the clients you can.
Yeah.
It should be picking up the clients who share the same beliefs and values that you do.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a huge mistake that a lot of businesses actually struggle with handling.
Yeah. So how do you choose products that align with your values? He argues use the celery test. So he said he was at a dinner party and people kept coming up to him, "Hey man, you need to use M&Ms in your business." And someone else came up and said almond or rice milk. Rice milk. And then someone else came up and said Oreo cookies. And then the last person came up and said celery. So we went to the store, spent a whole bunch of time trying to find the right brands, and he ended up spending a whole lot of money because he had a whole bunch of items. But when the other people in line saw what he was checking out with, they're like, what is he doing? But if your why is if you know your why, and if, say, for example, your why is to eat healthy, what are you doing grabbing those Oreos and those M&Ms? You're completely on a different path. So by grabbing only the celery and the rice milk, people know that what you believe essentially, and you're going to save on time and money, which is critical.
Yeah, time for sure, right? If you know what you're going in there for, then you don't have to be distracted by the thousands other things.
Yeah, and this translates into your products or your services in your business. So some of our takeaways here was it's okay to diversify outside of your normal product line, but it has to be consistent with your why. He gives another example of Volkswagen. They tried to make a luxury car with the same name, but America resonated with Volkswagen for being like a car for hippies, or the car that you see a vase on the front dashboard with flowers in it. So making a luxury car didn't like mix well with their brand.
It didn't go with their why.
Yeah.
For me here, in order to improve your how and what, you have to constantly be kind of looking at what other people are doing. People who you kind of look up to and share the same beliefs with. If they're doing things that you don't think are really all that beneficial, then maybe their why has changed. Maybe you guys have grown separate. And so if you can constantly see what everyone else is doing and have an idea of, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, will really improve your way of life.
Yeah. And you have to be able to pick out the right things. Like you have to know what to look for, in a sense.
If you know your why, you'll know what to look for.
Very true. Moving into part 5, the biggest challenge is success. So with success comes a lot of problems. And the first delineation he makes here is the difference between achievement and success. Achievement is reaching a goal, while success is staying true to your purpose.
Yeah, I have don't forget to celebrate your success, but more importantly, find some humor in your failures, right? Look where you failed, move on from the failure, and continue to try to improve and achieve more success.
Yeah. And I think this kind of goes back to the dark horse mindset. Achievement is like that end destination, which Todd Rose argued isn't really beneficial to have because it's going to change along the way. And he said to really enjoy the journey, which is what success should be, is staying true to your purpose. So again, moving along here, passion alone isn't enough for sustained success. Businesses need structure and a clear purpose to thrive after growth.
Yeah, passion may need structure to survive, but before structure to grow, it needs passion. So they kind of play off of each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
So
last part here is part 6, discover why. Leadership requires 2 things: a vision of the world that does not yet exist and the ability to communicate it. Man, I feel like everybody can have a vision, but the ability to really go execute and communicate that vision to others. So the house people of the world that are really good at building to really get to that vision can go in and do the work and really create that next revolutionary company.
And kind of add on to that, in order to be a leader, you need followers. And a follower is someone who voluntarily goes with you, not because you incentivized or threaten them, but because they want to, because they understand, you know, your why, you know where you're going, and I'm just along for the journey.
Awesome. I feel like we covered this book pretty well. Any other?
Yeah, I guess for me, the book, it talks about a lot of the same principles over and over again, just really instilling and hammering away that, you know, if you know your why, you'll know where you want to end up and you know how to get there. But first you have to truly understand why you're doing what you're doing.
And I think it's important for both the personal and business aspect.
Absolutely. So implementations?
Yeah, let's do it.
First off, automatically, I have to trust my gut more. And a prime example is, a couple days ago, I had a test, and they say, you know, once you answer the question the first time, never go back and change it, because, you know, you're going against what your gut said, your limbic brain. Well, I went back and I changed it, and my gut choice was right. But now I know that I feel the way I do about an answer for a reason. And whether I can put it into words or not, it just feels right.
Yeah. So do you have a tangible way that you're going to try to track this?
I'm just making quick decisions right off my gut.
Okay. So you'll come back.
It feels right. Yeah.
Few decisions next week, and if
Yeah.
appropriate, elaborate on them.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. My implementation, I think, is another joint one. So our very first episode, we kind of stated what our purpose we're trying to, like, why we started this podcast. But I think we need a tangible, a why, like a tangible vision statement. So I think we're going to try to cultivate that over the next week and see what kind of shape we can get it in. And I don't know if that's something that's going to be shared, but I think it's necessary moving forward here as we're almost into the double-digit episodes.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our favorite quotes.
So for my favorite quote this week was, selling based on price is like heroin. The short-term gain is fantastic, but the more you do it, the harder it becomes to kick the habit.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. You know, once you're cutting corners, and you see how easy it is and how good it feels, you don't ever want to go back to doing the right ethical thing. And I think you had kind of a point to add on to this.
Yeah, and it's as dangerous as any drug is. The more you use it, the more hazard that comes with it. So kind of translating over to business, what happens when those short-term gains aren't as high as before, and you have to do more and more price cuts, and eventually you're not making money anymore, which will in turn ruin your business.
Yeah.
So my quote is more of a story. So he uses Dr. Seuss in the book at the start of chapter 4. This is not an opinion, this is biology. Now the star belly sneeches had bellies with stars. The point belly sneeches had none upon thars. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small. You might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. He said, "You want stars like Star Belly Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each." And the reason I picked this quote from that he used from Dr. Seuss is because as humans, as social beings, we all have a desire to fit in a sense, and really communicate and belong with people who resonate with your values. So if people can really resonate with your company's values, and in turn, they will become loyal customers to your business and buy your products over and over again for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up our evaluation of the book and the quotes. So
Yeah.
What's next?
So next week is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I feel like most people have heard of it. So we're looking forward to really getting into that one.
Yeah.
So that wraps up this week's episode. We would just like to thank everyone for tuning in. Please always leave suggestions, feedback for how we can improve this podcast, and don't forget to follow our socials.
Yeah, Bound to Improve on Instagram and TikTok, YouTube, Spotify.
Awesome. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.